Okay. Well, today we're going to be making it a dark beer, and with any other fermented beverage, you just need three things to make a fermented beverage. You just need water, sugar, and some sort of yeast or bacteria that's going to eat that sugar and produce alcohol. So today we're producing the sugar water for our yeast to eat tomorrow to produce our beer. So with beer, of course, we use a grain called barley to get all our sugar from. It looks a lot like this, harvested in the field, skimmed to a guy called a maltster, and he takes that barley and he kilns it to different colors so we can get different color and flavor out of our beer. Today we'll be using a mix of light colored barley and dark colored barley so we can get a nice dark colored beer. We bring the barley in, we grind it open so it looks a little bit like this here. Nice and ground up so we can get the nice starchy inside. Starch, of course, is a form of sugar. Now starch as a form of sugar can't be eaten by our brewer's yeast, so what we have to do is break it down. And the way we're going to break it down is bring it in here to our kettle with some more water, let it soak. There'll be enzymes that come alive and start breaking down that sugar, so our yeast can eat it later on. So that's what we're going to start right now. This is where all the action goes. Take place here. Change the paddles up to the top until we grind it in the kettle here. You can see the dark color that's already starting to come in. That's the roasted barley, and pretty soon it'll start smelling a little bit like coffee in here. This will take about 10 minutes to get all the way in. So we've taken all the barley, put it in the warm water. It's going to sit here and soak for about an hour. The smell is wonderful. It smells a little bit like coffee and maybe grape nuts mixed together. And at the end of that hour, we're going to take all this barley and transfer it over to our next vessel and start filtering out all the sugar in the water and leaving the barley behind.
Now it's transferred into the other tank, correct?
Yeah, this is what's called the lauter tun. And what it has is a false bottom with slats in there, so it's going to allow water and sugar to pass through, but leave the barley husks behind. Because of course we don't want chunky beer. So the next step is just to let this settle for a little bit, and then we're going to start clarifying it, and then we'll pump the liquid back over to the kettle where we started off at. And that'll take about an hour and a half to get all that liquid out. So that's what that involves is we're trying to get the sugar and the water away from the barley so we can turn it into beer later on. That's what this wort grant here does. It allows me to control the flow and see how clear the beer is coming out of the lauter tun. We're taking the liquid from below the plates and pumping it back up on top of the barley until it gets nice and clear. And then once it's clear, we'll change that direction of the flow and start sending it over here to our kettle. And this, the clarification process can take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, or shorter or longer. It just depends on the beer. Mushroom as it comes out the metal part there pretty clearly before we start switching over the flow. So now we're just starting to pump into the kettle, and by the time we're done, we'll have liquid probably about a foot below the doorway here, and the next step in the process is boiling. But that's another hour and a half away. So now we're going to fix the yeast for our next batch of beer. We have a yeast bank that we use in Colorado. They overnight the stuff to me.
Now say it again.
Okay, and that's what brewer's yeast looks like here. Believe it or not, there's probably about 7 million cells of yeast in this little bladder right here. And by the time we're done fermenting, we'll probably have close to 70 million.
Go ahead.
Try to get all the last bit of yeast out of here. Clear it up for you a little bit. All right, so we've got enough volume now, and our sugar content's good. Next thing we need to add is up to 3 to 4 ingredients we put in beer. So barley, water, hops, and yeast. You saw the yeast in the tank next door. Saw the barley earlier and the water earlier. This is the last ingredient. This is the hops. This is what provides bitterness in our beer. These are pelletized, but these are from Germany. They're called German pearly hops. Quite bitter, but appropriate for this type of beer. So now we're starting our boil. We boil for a couple different reasons. One, to sterilize it. We don't want anything alive in this mess of sugar water here to compete with our yeast when we send it next door, and then to get the bitterness out of our hops that we just added. You got to boil hops for at least an hour to extract the bitterness out of them. Boil will last about an hour and a half, and then when we're done with that, we'll take it, cool it down, send it next door, and start fermenting it. From that point, it'll probably take about 14 days of fermentation and aging. Maybe 21 total before we can serve.